Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, we're going to start.
That's the tournament.
Would anybody like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Pat.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, let's see. We have as our guests Dr. Bell, who will be presenting in just a moment. Let's see, Deborah Cantorero and Carol Robinson from the Classified Senate. And I'm just catching new names. Jeff from the Classified Senate. And Susie Ling, who will be presenting in a moment as well. Okay. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Everybody had a chance to review them. Does anybody have any changes that they would like to bring to us? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes? So moved. Okay, first Nella first and Pat second. Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And anybody who'd like to abstain who wasn't here? Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody would like to make a public comment? Thank you.
Hey everybody, we're here as representatives from the Classified Senate. I think you guys probably all know me, Deborah Cantorero, and this is Carol Robinson. She's the Vice President for the Classified Senate for this year. And we just wanted to just bring to your attention that there's been some confusion with some of the committee work, and so it's been very difficult for us to kind of get everything aligned this year as far as getting people to go to the right point to ask for committee members and then getting those committee members approved by the Classified Senate. And so we just wanted to make sure if there was any questions or anything that you guys would feel free to ask, because it just seems like it's really difficult this year. There's a lot of miscommunication and a lot of things going ways that they traditionally haven't been going. So. And
it's not just academic senate, it's lots of departments that are creating committees, and we don't hear about the committees. So it's difficult for us to place classified representatives on the committees. And a lot of times the committees get to us with classified people already on the committees without us even knowing what the process was to choose those people, because as vice president, that's what I do, is go out and find the correct people to sit on the committees. So we're trying to go around and explain that there's a process that needs to be followed. And sometimes we have people that are waiting in line to be on specific committees. And if somebody's already appointed them that is a part of Classified Senate, then we have to tell these people, oh, Academic Senate has already appointed somebody on there. We don't know how, but you won't be used this year. So there's a lot of things that need to be sort of up front when you form a committee. Please call one of the Classified Senate people, myself, Carol Robinson, or Deborah, or Jeff back here, Denise, anybody, so we can get that line of communication going. And it makes our life a lot easier because it's a lot faster to get it done. Yes?
In terms of the division communication you're talking about, are you referring mainly to hiring committees?
We're talking about campus committee and hiring committees.
Okay, because I'm just trying to think in my division, we don't have really committees other than hiring that I can think of where...
That's been a little bit problematic as well.
You formed some committees here that we found out through rumor.
Well, actually, Dustin clarified that on the one.
We've been talking to Dustin about it. But it's just to be... I have my spreadsheet. I gave it to Dr. Rocha, but there's a lot. You have no idea how many committees there are, how many hiring committees, especially this year. To get the right people on them, we like to have people with background in the area, and not just put a body or a name on a committee, so it takes a little time. Yes.
Classified Senate, you're here throughout the summer, aren't you? Because you don't.
Yes,
We're
okay.
here all the time.
And these issues started in June, so it isn't like, you know, it just started now. We began in June and with a lot of confusion and with new administrators and so on that don't really understand the shared governance. And it's not getting any better, so we're hoping that it will now.
Because we're all working together to get these committees. I mean, we all want everybody to be represented, and we're just trying to look for the most efficient way to get these committees up and running. And so, since it's the charge of the Classified Senate to appoint people to the committees, we thought we would come to our brothers, the Academic Senate, and start with you, just so that we can get the word out and that you can help us let everybody know what the process is.
Right. And just to give an example, I don't think that you would like, the Academic Senate wouldn't like the fact that we placed 2 faculty on a committee without explaining things.
I don't even think we can do that.
No, but, so it's just that kind of efficiency that we're looking for.
Just to let you know, I have a meeting scheduled with Denise tomorrow morning, and we'll talk about this and clarify exactly what and when and how things happen. And if I was ever responsible for anything, I'd like to publicly apologize. Nothing was done intentionally.
Thank you.
But I will be meeting with Denise tomorrow.
Like I said, it started in June and it isn't Academic Senate per se, but we thought we would be able to talk to you first. Thank you.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Okay, with the approval and willingness of the body, in the interest of Dr. Bell's schedule, I would like to move the first information item, number 1, the calendar committee, up to the front. Does anybody have any objection to that change? Okay, so I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Bell and Twisty.
Shall we just sit here? Is that all right?
Sure, that's
okay. We're here for 2 reasons. Sort of 2 issues. Last time we were here together, we had just completed our year-long shared governance committee work and presented you with the approved calendar. A lot has changed since then. 3 months after that, we were all informed that we had a new calendar. So there's one thing that concerns me as a co-chair in particular, and that is the representation on this calendar committee. It has nothing to do with the tentative calendar that we're talking about, but it does concern me that the faculty are not fully represented in the makeup of the committee. So I wanted to just bring that to the Academic Senate and perhaps ask you to look at that committee and advise as to how we should proceed with that. I mean, it's already a pretty large committee, but a lot of people have been asking to be on this committee, as you can understand. I don't really quite know what to say. I don't want to turn anybody away, but there are many groups on campus and many individuals on campus who are very concerned about what's going on in this committee. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. That's just a committee matter. The second matter is really what we've been talking about all along, and that's the process. We used to have to beg people to come to calendar committee meetings. We used to have to feed them. Now there's this whole other mood on campus, and there's a real sense of urgency and some desperation about what's happening in this and many other committees on campus. So I think really this is a shared governance issue, and this is the place for us to discuss that. This committee worked really effectively and efficiently with the help of Kathy Barnes to conduct our business. We did it. We were proud of it, and our work was dismissed. And I thought that we were mandated to operate under AB 1725, and I thought we were meant to cooperate with each other, and we were to practice collegial shared governance, and that has not been my experience. I thought we were supposed to conduct these committees in a democratic fashion, and we tried to do that, but our recommendations are dismissed. And I thought our committees were supposed to be driven by faculty expertise, and that the people who were affected by changes on campus were supposed to have a say in what was going on, and that has not been my experience. So I really feel that very strongly that as a chair of one of these committees, and I'm not speaking for Dr. Bell, he can speak for himself, that we really need to discuss that, and we need to discuss it now. Dr. Ball, would you like to say anything?
No, and the only thing I would add, I agree with Chris's positions on both points. We are, in fact, it's on the agenda for the first meeting of calendar committee Thursday. One of our specific agenda items is to talk about shared governance. And I don't believe it's going to be exclusive to the province of what we do in calendar committee, but more broadly stated. So, and I think, again, I agree with Chris completely, the whole aspect of the engagement of faculty on the calendar committee so that there's the clear sense that the entire group of faculty, the voice of faculty is heard on the committee, and that information from the committee goes out and comes back collectively. And it is done in as collective, a whole, and a complete process as we possibly can. So we're in concert here.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
First, a statement. Last time we met, I asked you if the calendar, this issue of the calendar committee was an issue of us, the Academic Senate, or the FA, and you said the FA. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so why are we discussing this then here? If that's out of our control.
The calendar committee is still a committee of the academic senate. At least it's a shared governance committee that's connected to the academic senate.
So
this determines like when holidays are and things like professional development days and when they are. Those are discussed by this body.
So what is the FA then? What's their role?
I'm confused. The FA's
then.
role is the working conditions aspects of the calendar.
Can you give me an example?
Roger, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, the history of this going back before 2000, for example. The leadership of the CTA in the period from roughly the 78 to 2000 had very little interest in the calendar. It was strictly a calendar committee from the Academic Senate and a college-wide calendar committee. And a number of people wore both hats. Dorothy Potter, for many years, chaired the Senate Calendar Committee, right, Dorothy? Is that correct? That was a fun job. And we would spend an awful lot of time in this assembly talking about 3 or 4 choices of calendar, and then Dorothy would go back to the college-wide calendar committee with some direction, and then would come back. It would take months. And Edward Martinez approached the FA a year or 2 ago and said, perhaps we could change the process. But the FA really isn't directly involved as some people. I want to make this real clear. So the Senate Calendar Committee was dissolved as an entity, is my understanding. And so the college-wide calendar committee then became the one body in which, as I understand, all constituent groups, so that's, I believe the faculty unions, well, faculty union is there, but the classified and students are all represented. It's a very good body, and actually had pretty good representation from, I went to a couple of meetings just to sort of poke my head in, and it seemed pretty good. So the college-wide calendar committee then deliberates on calendar and brings their findings to the Senate. The Senate then reviews for a week, comes back 2 weeks later and signs off or questions, etc. That we haven't had this very many years. Then it goes to the College Council. And here's Bob Miller, who's chaired the College Council for a bit. And then it's passed. And then the FA signs off on it. So the FA is really one of the last to sign off before it goes to the Board of Trustees. So that process we thought worked pretty well last year in that the FA really took the shared governance findings from Calendar Committee, Senate, and then College Council talked about a little bit, but those 3 entities I thought worked pretty well, and that there was a lot of input from associate students, and input I think from classified staff. So we thought the process worked. And I agree with Krista, we're very, very disturbed that the rug has been pulled out and the entire shared governance discussions that went all last year were basically made irrelevant because of the attempted imposition of a winter session being canceled and a change in spring and so forth. So I'm very upset that the Senate's shared governance prerogatives, the college calendar's shared governance prerogatives have been undermined. And I don't know if we need some kind of letter of concern from this body, because this is a very, very severe rupture in the democratic process of shared governance.
Anyone else like to ask a question?
I have a follow-up with Krista. When you first started, you said you were concerned about the lack of faculty. I wanted to hear a little bit more. Are you thinking, do we need to make sure that we maybe have clearer mandates around divisions, like what divisions are represented,
I think
or just amount?
Like I said, in the history of this committee is that we beg people to be on the committee.
Right.
And the people who are on the committee are hardcore.
Right.
Calendar people. They've been
That's
there
a
for a
nerd
long
moment
time.
to state.
And so so I have no problem with our committee, but
Right.
I think that I've been hearing from division, they feel that they're not represented in the
Mhm.
committee, and other people would like to participate, so
Do you think that each division should have a rep?
I do.
So it sounds like that's a recommendation that as we go through the policy 2000, you write that academic senate would want to make, is that there on the calendar committee is a clear representative from each of our schools or divisions. Just to clarify, that's why I was asking, is it number or department division?
So expansion.
I have a question. Krista, do you have any proposed action that the Academic Senate should take in regard to the unilateral decision to change the calendar?
As a senator,
Yes.
well, I think I'm going to have to speak as an FA board director and say that, you know, the tentative calendar is tentative. It has not been completely negotiated, and it's very hard for us to operate. I know that we feel that we've had this calendar imposed upon us, but it's a violation of our contract, and it's my duty to protect that contract from a legal point of view. So I don't really know how we should proceed, but I would ask the Senate to consider opposing the imposition of this calendar.
Yes, please.
Since Dr. Dale is here, could I ask him to clarify something that confused me last week in the Courier? I don't know if it's a typo, if it's correct. There was a statement about the summer sessions, that the first one will start on May 13th, the second one will start on June 24th, and this will allow for classes to be scheduled either 8 weeks or 12 weeks. Is that the correct information, that we'll only have two choices in the summer if that calendar finally passes, either 8 or
6 or
12 weeks, and who made that decision? Was
No, I wouldn't say that's an accurate depiction. The plan for the summer is, and I know in the past, Pasadena City College has had 2 distinct summer sessions. The plan for the summer term is a more full-length summer term, which will be 12 weeks, maybe 14 weeks in length. And within that academic period, there'll be classes which will be term length, okay? And then there'll be other short-term classes within there. To give an example, in the spring of last year where we did a 16-week session, we did that 12-week spring forward intersession. The distinctive 12-week academic period within the construct of a 16-week calendar. That's the same design we're doing for this upcoming summer. So I know in the past we've had a distinctive first summer session and the second summer session, as I understand, they weren't necessarily linked together. And sometimes the enrollment in the first was more than the enrollment in the second in the past. We're looking at a summer term, which will be approximately the same term length as the prior academic period in the summer, 12 weeks, but they will not be distinctively different, separate academic periods.
So as a follow-up question, why are we talking about 2, the first and the second? If it's only one summer term, why are we talking, when we have classes of different duration in the spring semester, we don't call it 2 spring semesters, we just call it 1 spring semester?
Yeah, and all I can represent is that when the article was written, and I believe you're quoting the Courier, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that the reporter didn't get that accurately. The reporter identified the 2 distinct summer terms. Okay, so it is. We're talking a single summer term, not 2 summer periods. So not that that's a misquote, but that's not accurately what I showed with the reporter.
Are you talking about like a full 16-week semester in the summer?
No, that's not enough time.
No, the compression of time isn't enough. It's a shorter period of time, which will be probably more like 12 weeks, but it will operate like a term-length academic period.
So instead of everything that they usually get in 16 weeks, they'll get in 14 weeks somehow?
Well, it was a class that would normally mount in 16 weeks will represent itself in the summer the same as, again, that academic intercession.
So the hours will be longer?
Yes, it'll have to be.
One more question, so will the departments have the freedom to, for example, offer classes that will last 6 weeks
Yes.
versus 8 weeks?
Correct.
And, but we are not going back to the times when we had 6 weeks back to back?
Well, again, within the construct of a 12-week term, if you're saying could the department or could the division offer a 6-week continuing class and then another 6 week right behind it, yes, you could. At the same time, there could be separate classrooms to run the full 12.
Isn't that a scheduling nightmare for rooms?
Yes, it's going to be a challenge, absolutely. Yeah.
Dr.
And
Bell?
that's the problem, balancing with the current room inventory.
If a student takes a 6-week course in the first summer and then decides to take another course in the second 6 weeks, are there any restrictions for those students to take classes, or is it just open enrollment as it normally has been?
It all has to be approved by Cynthia Olivo and counseling.
No, for the student has, what do you mean?
There's a certain number of credits they can take, and if they want to try and go beyond that, she has some control mechanism where they have to come in and talk to her.
I'm saying,
That's true in any semester, currently.
Right, so taking one class in 6 weeks, and then she wants to, then he or she wants to take another class the next 6 weeks?
Oh, no,
That should be fine, yeah.
Right, that's
You
okay.
can
they
go
were trying
to a
to
full,
take it-
whatever the current full load is, we
Right.
should be able to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like you would do during a normal session where you may have a student who takes 2 or 3 classes, like
Right.
we teach during summer.
And that's what we look at, because typically now when we look at an intercession, it's usually, students are usually limited to eight units in anything
Right.
that normally is an intercession. That allowable course unit value that a student can take will be expanded in the summer. And then the student needs to, if you will overload, take more than that, that's where Cynthia will come in and approve
Right.
the existing units.
Time for maybe one more question, please, Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the handout that we got in our boxes, and I believe on the website now, talks about 2 intersections, and gives those specific dates as well. So that's directly from the administration. So,
And I am correcting that again. I tell everyone we're going to do a summer term, but people have reverted back, and I'm working to change that to the past operations since PCC, where we had 2 distinct summer intercessions. I talked to one about correcting that on the web. We will work on that. But we're talking 3 academic terms, 1 fall, 1 spring, and 1 summer. The summer will be less in time, but it's not going to be mounted for 2 distinct summer intercessions, which again, not being here, but I understand that's how we did summer in the past at PCC.
but that's the way the handout in our boxes and on the website currently states.
And I will correct the website, and again, we'll start getting corrected information now. Okay, because I know that's, and I hear you correct, I haven't read the Courier, but that's what represented in the Courier will correct that.
Why do they keep referring to this as a trimester system when it's not a trimester? It's a regular system with a summer school. Why don't they, if they're gonna go to a trimester, why don't they go to a true trimester? And then everything can be equal each.
Well, again, I think the trimester is really just, again, the nomenclature that the college has used in the past when the first.
We've never had a trimester here, so it's not our
Okay,
word,
well,
but surely it's the administration's words.
Well, I didn't invent it, so I don't know where it came from. I understand that in the past when we talked about doing.
We had 2 in the summer.
Yeah,
Like
doing
what
that
you're
first
saying,
count,
yeah,
that's
2
just in the
summers.
winter.
I just wanted to note whether this calendar change now, because originally when they started talking about the calendar change, they were talking about the Carnegie hours, and I don't want this to just get sprung on us from nowhere. So is that being discussed at the same time as the calendar change, or is that just been dropped?
The Carnegie hour?
Yes.
That's outside of this discussion.
So where is that discussion?
It's in negotiations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I do want to, with the interest, we have some voting items, so I do want to make sure we get to that first. So I do thank Dr. Bell and Krista for the presentation. I want to move to the Senate
May I ask one
goals.
final question, though? Yeah, I'm sorry, but who's determined how many classes will be offered in this term of 12 weeks or 6 and 6? Has that been been determined yet? The amount
The
of
exact number of
classes?
classes, no, it hasn't been determined yet. We know the number, we know our work role obligation for this current academic year. We know the total number of sections. When we get into the summer, we're talking about next year's workload obligation. So right now, no, that hasn't been determined. A lot of that will be driven by what we discovered, and a lot of it's going to be discussion with the students on what the need is, what class we put there, what classes and what academic divisions pointing to our completion agendas. So to answer your question directly as well, it has not been determined. My sense is it's going to be a richer summer session than we normally would have done. A lot of that will depend on what happens with that tax measure in November and whether it passes, and the deferred revenue that we're getting, how much deferred revenue we'll actually get towards the end of the fiscal year, early in the calendar year in 2013.
Thank you.
Okay, Bob, you get the last word.
I'd like to actually make a motion. I think Dr. Bell is in a very difficult position because when we're in negotiations, and Dr. Rocha sits in on negotiations now with the two attorneys from their side, and nothing is ever clear. Trimester comes and it goes. Is it going to be 2 6-week or something else? And I can't tell you, my phone rings off the hook. I get emails from people all the time. What am I going to do in winter? I already have plans. And I think everybody in this room understands that the implementation of elimination of winter and the starting of spring early in January is at best a grave disservice to the shared governance process and a terrible inconvenience for so many people who are trying to make plans, including 27,000 students. And so I would like to propose a motion, if it's in order.
Well, it could be today, because it's not on your agenda.
Yeah, you can't have a motion on an information item.
I would like then for people to think about that this body go on record as supporting the deliberations of the College Calendar Committee, which established a calendar for academic year 12-13 that included the winter session, and that because all of us have been preparing for that we, the Senate, go on record as supporting that as a part of reasonable implementation of calendar and the defense of shared governance. So that would be something I guess I would bring up at the next session if that's the appropriate.
You have to bring it, you have to submit it as an agenda item.
I will do that.
Okay, I
You
do
can't
want to
do
move on.
anything
That
about
was the
that.
last. So I want to move to the Senate goals. So thank you, Dr. Sure.
I don't want to seem rude, but I anticipate 30 minutes. Can I leave for a 3:30 appointment?
Sure. Yes, please.
Can I ask before you leave though?
Your turn.
How is it that we're getting around the legality of the catalog being published already? In other words, you know, students could sue over the fact that spring is getting moved up, and that those courses, that whole winter has been essentially defunct because it's already published in the catalog. So how are we getting around the legalities of a published document that is publicly available and that is essentially a contract with our students and the community?
Well, not just Pasadena City College, but any community college governing board has the ability to make changes within the scope of any catalog, 1 year or 2 year catalog. The obligation, if any changes such as what we're talking about now, a calendar is made, the obligation is to make sure that the catalog is updated, to do an addendum, if you will, which is the advantage of having an online catalog as opposed to a hard copy catalog exclusively. So the governing board does have the ability to take an action such as it did. We then have the obligation to make sure that we do the addendum on the update to the catalog, which is what we're doing. Strikes back with Danny in the case we're not doing it correctly, we'll go to work on that. But you can make those changes within the catalog.
Usually a year in advance, though, you don't usually do it in the middle of a published year. I mean, that's where we get into very hot water and potentially put the campus in very severe, in a very difficult position, and could put it in financial danger by essentially allowing for this kind of shift mid-year.
It's a tenuous position. I will admit the college does have to respond accordingly and make sure that we let the public know, make sure that specifically we let the state chancellor's office know, which we've done, make sure that we let other organizations like the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. know so that they understand how it's going to impact financial aid for students. We have an obligation to do that when we make a change of any magnitude, not just account any magnitude, and we are doing that. So I don't know if it really rises to the fact that we're doing anything illegal, but it does put a higher obligation on us to make sure that we follow through with all the contacts of everyone so that we let the public know, and we let any of those other agencies know, State Chancellor's Office, Department of Education, Washington, D.C., and everyone else. I don't want to, if I stay here, I'll take up all your time.
All right, so thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bell.
Thank you. See you guys.
Okay. So I'm going to move to our second read item, which is the actual voting item. That's the Senate goals. It's sent out to everybody by email, and also we have a few paper copies. There's really no change from last week. The only thing that I did do is just combine hot topics and town hall meetings into one item. But beyond that, it's exactly the same as what we discussed last time. So I'm willing to entertain a motion to approve these goals, if anybody's willing to do so.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Any second? Thank you. On. Okay, any discussion of these 9 goals? Basically, the keys are the bullets, but I just gave an explanation of each item based on our discussion last week. Is there any particular concern anybody has about anything here? Yes, please.
I wasn't sure about number 4. I mean, particularly since now that equivalency issue is in the hiring policy, and so, and I was getting conflicting messages this week about that particular issue. So, just clarifying.
We'll be talking about that today, actually, so let's save that for about 5 minutes. We're deciding whether we actually want to put this policy that Susie's using into practice or follow what is about to be passed by the board, which is the policy that you worked on last year. But we'll be talking about that in about 5 minutes. Right, Susie, you wanted to still bring it up, right? Yeah, Susie still wants to talk about it today. Yes.
Okay, so for Martha, can we hold off on number 4 until after?
Okay. Okay, until after that discussion. That's fine.
Although 4 says consider as opposed to clarify, so.
That's what sort of considering it today, right?
Is that okay?
No, I just didn't know whether it was should be.
Sort of what we're doing today is considering it.
Do you feel comfortable with the consider? Because it says consider codifying as opposed to actually codifying.
I just didn't know if it was still on the list. Or, yeah, that was really.
That was a done deal.
Right. Any other?
May I get a clarification on number 2?
Sure.
One issue that I don't know if this is the right moment to say or ask or not,
It is.
but regarding the ADRA policy for classes, who should we go to, or whose responsibility is it to determine that the last day to add a class or drop a class without a W?
So this is not that add drop policy.
Yeah,
We
this
clarified
is-
this last
okay,
time for you.
right, but I'm still unclear. That's why I was asking.
This is about whether or not you get all of the sections of your classes.
Right,
This is more
okay,
like,
right.
for example, the college is going to be reducing by 567 sections.
I understand, but
what policy would the deans be asked to follow to reduce those?
right, I understand. But I was going to clarify that. That's what I'm thinking about, and how do I go about introducing that to put that as a goal?
I'm sorry, maybe I'm not understanding the question.
Oh,
Okay.
adding the date changes for the add drop
Right.
policy.
I don't know if as the academic senate that is something we can do or cannot do.
Is that calendar?
I was going to say that may be a counseling issue because we need to do that based on reporting for FTES and other things that may be state mandated. Am I right?
Census data.
Yeah, those are state mandated, right? So that would not be us.
Thank you. Okay.
So like, for example, like what happens now currently is that, and I've spoken to a couple of deans about this, they sort of just, I mean, I trust them, they're doing a good job, and they follow sort of a practice in their mind about what classes are most important to keep and what ones aren't. But my understanding after reading and talking to people from NAPA is, why would we want to sort of cede that power? We can actually sort of give them guidelines ourselves and say, this is how you should do it. We might find that actually ends up lining up pretty closely with what they do, but why not actually pass a policy? So that's where this comes from.
No,
I actually have a
understand
model
that.
that I'll be showing to you
Yeah.
once this gets approved as a
But your
rule.
question is the state. Talk to
Okay.
them.
All right.
Yes.
Can I get some clarification on number 1, the last sentence? Committees will be streamlined. I'm not sure I understand either what that means and how it's going to be accomplished.
Well, it seems to be in concert with what Crystal and I and a couple other people have been working on in terms of the sort of shared governance committees and sort of streamlining the process of those committees coming together, that we probably are going to want to, I don't want to use the word echo it, but actually sort of use that as a model for our own committees. Because I was looking through it when I first came into office, and it seems like a lot of them haven't met in 5, 10, 15 years, at least in my understanding. So we've been looking at the possibility of combining some committees together, for example. So that's when I use the word streamline, that's what I mean. Make it clearer.
Is there a way the language can be changed to you will consider streamlining committees rather than just saying
That's fine. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yes?
2 of these are going to be talked about today, right?
Yes.
So then what's the point of going over this and approving this until we're talking about the 2 things that are on here?
Well, yeah,
because if we say no to those 2 things, then the Senate goals are not going to be passed.
The Senate goal is only to talk about the plus minus, so we're sort of, I guess if you said we don't do that, then we don't talk about it today. I just take it off the agenda. So in essence, you're sort of deciding the agenda for the day as well. If we don't decide to go with the plus minus as even an item to discuss, like you remove number 7, I would just remove that from the agenda today. I understand what you're asking though. So I guess we can't really talk about number 7 until you approve.
We can't approve these until we talk about those 2 things. And if we say we don't want to talk about those 2 things, then we can approve these, right?
No.
Or you can remove those.
Yes.
These goals do not determine every single thing that we will or won't do during the course of this year. I think these are goals that we came up with during the summer, but as the year goes by, as we all know, other things may unfold that we think is vitally important for us to.
Yeah, we're not talking about limiting this
No,
list.
but what I'm trying to say is if it isn't on this sheet, that doesn't mean we can't introduce it at some point.
Right, but that's going the opposite of what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is there's 2 things on this sheet that we're going to talk about today.
I know.
So if we
But
were
even
to
if we
say
took
we
a-
don't want to, the Senate to look at those 2 things after we talk about them today, then it would be impossible to pass this, right?
Well, the wording of it sort of just says consider it. So just by today and talking about those 2 things, we're considering them. And by considering them, we're going to say we're not going to talk about them. Or we're not going to do them.
That's pretty
So for example,
well, forget it.
bring up
Never
plus and
mind. Just
minus,
go ahead.
and basically the body says we don't want to talk about plus and minus, then the goal was basically met. We considered it and we said no.
Okay.
But I agree to the committees will, the committees will be, what was the wording? I'm sorry, Lenora? I like your wording.
The body will consider streamlining.
The body will consider streamlining committees with that change. That's a friendly amendment, so I'll certainly take that. Any other changes? Okay, there was a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving this list of goals, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, so I talked to Susie before this meeting, and we had some conversation over the past week about this, but after talking to her, she would still like the body to consider the memo on equivalency here. This is a first read, so we're not going to vote on anything today. But I just wanted to turn the floor over to Susie. She could talk about this particular issue, but to give a little bit of background, we did have a request from Joe Footner over the summer in terms of approving a couple of adjuncts to teach in the classroom. And there was a logistical problem. I think Susie was away on vacation. And it was an emergency because of the new rules in terms of getting people hired. So we convened an emergency meeting to determine the equivalency of these 2 individuals. After that particular meeting, I talked to Susie and a couple others and talked about this particular policy that you have here, about how they act and how they give equivalency in those kinds of circumstances. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to her and let her explain her memo.
Thanks for having me. I know there's a lot of issues on the campus, and I know these are not the hottest issues. I get it. And that's why it's never passed. Equivalency, I've been on the equivalency for a long, long time, and it's just something we always do. It's exactly what I wrote in the memo pretty much is what we always do and is mandated by the state. I would just like to have it on paper, and it would need to go through the academic senate. And the reason I want it on paper is because when there is a new division dean or a potential candidate that is not does not have a master's degree, I can hand them the paper and say, well, this are the definitions. So we have something to work with. Because without this piece of paper, I'm having to explain the rules, and it doesn't seem like a fair thing to do. It should be a policy. But actually the policy is determined by the state and not really by our particular campus. So what I would like is for the academic senate to approve this as a policy, I guess. Well, and then if it's on the hiring policy, so much the better for me, that it's on 2 pieces of papers.
So I think a lot of this was incorporated into the hiring policy.
We put literally verbatim what had been used and was used, and it's in section 10 of 6100. And that act, that whole section was given to us in the first draft by Edward Martinez, and then the Shared Governance Committee edited and made adjustments that kept pretty much the material there.
So are you saying that it would be helpful for you to have it both there and here, to have like your memo that you've been following along with that policy? together.
It is very, very simple. I'm gonna defer to the Senate on this issue. It's your call.
Have you seen the section one
Yes.
and the, and is it?
It's adequate, but it would be nice to have a memo, but it's up to the Senate.
No, but I mean,
I've read it,
it's
yes.
aligned, the two are
Yes,
aligned.
absolutely.
So the memo would function as a kind of handout for,
It can.
Yeah,
mhm.
all right.
So maybe maybe instead of, you know.
We could call it a best practices, and we could.
Or just a handout,
Mhm.
rather than a best practices. I mean, if they're fairly aligned, then what's the difference? I mean, it's just one you can hand out to an applicant.
Mhm.
So you could just call it a handout.
Penelope, do you have anything you want to add?
No, that's
Okay. Does that meet your satisfaction, or to call it a handout? With Senate backing?
Academic Senate handout, is that what you're saying? Or
Is that the
what?
language you're suggesting, Martha, or?
Well, this is, it actually is policy. So, is there something in the handout that is not covered in the policy that you want to make it a kind of officiated?
It's just separate and it's a little bit kinder language, but it's not policy
Okay.
language.
Yeah, it's not quite policy yet. It's going to be going to the Board of Trustees at their next meeting.
Okay, well, let's call it an academic senate handout then,
All right.
for new hires, for new, you know, that are facing equivalency issues so that they have a clear how to proceed. So, because the policy is in-house and academic hires wouldn't necessarily see that and know what to do next. And this would give new hires, okay, I need equivalent, what does that mean, what do I do? So this would be a lovely kind of, you know, addendum, as they say, to existing policy, a handout. We just have to make sure it's aligned.
Yes, please, Joe.
I thought equivalency was something of a question before they're hired.
It is before they're hired.
So it's not a new hire, it's a potential applicant, it's actually an applicant.
Yeah, so that's something you can give to, in HR, you can give to the applicant so they know what to do next.
And the key part of this that would have been helpful to me over the summer is on page 1, the front of it, under the equivalency procedure, is one part of the hiring process section. You know, we sort of just did that by intuition, but to actually, you know, have it like written like this, I didn't look at 6100 because it hadn't been passed by the board yet, and it's about to be passed in a couple weeks. So that particular section especially would be guidance to me and to future presidents to know what to do during the summer. You can't reach the head of the equivalency committee and like, what exactly do I do? And so again, we just sort of did it by intuition, both in consultation with each other and with Dr. Bell. And so we sort of just did this, but once I saw this and saw what Susie had been doing, we have these people that Joe just desperately wanted to get them approved. So this would give us guidance about how to do it. And exactly, here, this is the committee you formed, this is what their charge is. And so we already did this, but it would have been nice to have like, here's the memo that tells me exactly what to do.
But that's in, you should have had that in 6100 and you should have looked at it because that's part of the documents of this body. So, but this would be a good thing to have just as a, but that's why it has to be aligned with the already existing language, because that part of 6100, section 10, came out of how the Senate had already been operating. And it came out of an MOU already existing that Edward Martinez had signed. So it's already existing material.
Susie, do you have anything to add to that? Okay. Okay, yes, please.
I think it might be helpful to, perhaps before we vote on something like this, have the policy so that we can look and identify how are they different, how is this helpful as opposed to having it in policy, because I think lots of us are feeling a little ignorant on that topic.
That be what it says?
Right, so that we can
Got it.
compare how they're different and how that would be helpful.
Okay. Valerie.
Also, I don't know the difference, why we're arguing about memo versus handout. I'm not sure what implication this has. It says memo, but it seems important to her.
It is.
And so I don't feel comfortable voting on it either if I don't know the difference between the implications of saying it's a handout versus the implications of saying it's a memo.
Yeah, I think that once you use the word memo, it becomes sort of like a memo of understanding that gives it some legal weight. So that is true. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is one that I said I bring forward with a bit of trepidation, but here it is. I'm just gonna, you mind if I just read it, Susie? Or do you want to read it?
I'll explain it.
Okay.
First I thought, well, I'm here at the Academic Senate, and might as well go for a twofer. And this has been an issue that's been of great concern to me. And somebody asked me, why are you causing so much trouble? And I want to answer that. I'm doing it for the B+ student. And I think you all understand that the B+ student is seriously different from the B- student. And I want to do it for the B+ student. I've been wanting to do it for the B+ student for a long, long time. It's a, what is it? Flexible, voluntary plus-minus system. But if we put it in the book, and he doesn't want to give pluses and minuses, that's his prerogative. But me, another teacher, I want to give pluses and minuses. I want to have that flexibility for the student. The state does not allow us to give us C minuses, and the state does not allow us to give A pluses, right? You can give an A plus, but it doesn't have a numerical difference from an A. So I did some homework on this. I would like the Academic Senate to allow a voluntary committee to look into this issue and what are the pros and cons of establishing a policy that gives flexible, choices to the instructor. I did look this up a little bit, and if you trust the internet, 7 out of the 8 UCs allow pluses and minuses, and of course the exception is UCSC, right? Center groups. Okay. 21 of the 23 Cal States use pluses and minuses, but only 10 of the 120 community colleges use plus and minus. Many high schools allow for plus and minuses, although I'm not understanding it. It doesn't count for the UC thinking or something or another. I didn't understand what they were talking about. But
it has different weights, so it can have, it's differently weighted.
Right, different weighted, right. But the reality is students see on their transcript, right, a plus or minus in most high schools. The plus and minus system was not allowed at the community college during the early years, right, when community colleges was thought of as an extension of high school. It has been allowed by the California Community College Board since 1997. And I think I would like to have that flexibility, and that's what I'm saying.
So I'm understanding correctly, you're asking for us to form a voluntary committee to take a look at this going forward? So you don't want to actually vote on the actual motion, you want us to study it?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Yes, please.
Susie, would you mind telling us the history of this struggle on our campus?
Yes. It was passed on the board in 1997, and at that time a committee was established to look into it, and the faculty voted against it, against implementing a plus and minus, for reasons I did not understand. Since then, it's not been touched. If I'm not mistaken, some of you have been on the board longer than I have.
I think it was brought up a couple of years ago and it was dismissed again.
I recall like maybe around 2000, 2001, we had this discussion too, and it didn't go.
2000 was, can I mention, that's 12 years ago.
No, not 2000, after that. I was in the faculty senate.
2010, you mean?
Yes.
No, I just think it's 10 years ago. Yeah. That's the last time I remember.
2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the whole faculty has voted on it since I've been here, and I've been here for about 8 years now. So I know that in my division, when I first came to Faculty Senate, the thing that like I had 5, 6 people say was try to get them to do the plus and minuses. That was like Rebecca Morris's when she deeded to me. That's what you want to get done. So from my division, I would say that we just need to have the faculty vote on it again. Is it that much trouble to have the faculty vote on it?
Yes, please, Pat.
My recollection was we, as the reps, went back and tried to engage our divisions in a conversation and have them have an opportunity to thrash around. And then we all came back and reported, but there was not widespread support for going with pluses and minuses. There may have been, there were some support. I don't want to say nobody supported it. Of course, there were some groups that did, but it just wasn't an overwhelming enough support that we moved forward with that.
Do you remember the reason?
I think there were a number of reasons. I think some faculty, even though Susie refers to it as a volunteer thing, we know that when something like that is put in place, it becomes a little less than just being volunteer, because students who think they could have gotten something better if there had been that plus, they don't think about the people getting the minus, but they think about the people getting the plus, and so they're very anxious to have that option, because it does give a little bit of an edge if you're going to get an extra, you know, we saw that schema. So, however, I think for the small difference it made, most faculty did not feel that there was that much benefit to it. Plus, it meant for a lot of faculty who might not otherwise have done it, when the students seemed to be saying, well, my other teachers are doing it, why won't you give us a plus minus? Then those teachers who weren't particularly interested in it, in volunteering to get on the bandwagon, they felt that they were going to be more or less urged to the point where they would have to. And it does mean, you know, some teachers, being a math person, this doesn't apply to me, but some teachers can just grade by keeping track of A, B, C, D, a more general grading. Everything doesn't have to be, you know, like 91.5 and things like that on every graded exercise. And so it became more cumbersome when they had to actually keep track that, because the distinctions are not as broad. There's a range for the, say, the B plus and the B minus and so forth. So your grades also had to be more, some teachers felt their grades would have to be more refined than they were used to having to keep. So there were just a lot of different reasons, but there just wasn't overriding support for moving ahead. Perhaps their times would have changed, and there would be. But I still think that model was good, to discuss it at the division level and to get all the reasons out, and then to bring it back and see where we stand.
Martha?
Well, I think the volunteer was actually a volunteer committee or like an ad hoc
No,
committee.
it was a volunteer implementation of plus minus.
Well, because I was thinking the committee to study the implementation could include, you know, studies of people who are actually in the, so the committee, if it was a committee to study the implementation, volunteers could be part of that process. But also that committee could generate information that the rest of us could share with our divisions, so that it doesn't just become about preference issue. So that would be a good thing. And I think with the advent of Excel, you know, and spreadsheet of our grading process, that there's not as much, you know, well, I'll eyeball this.
Right. Or the implementation of assessment and rubrics into the classroom. I don't know, or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. You know, so there actually might be more of a, you know, a sense that it's a possibility, it's a viewable possibility. So I'm all for a committee that would study this implementation, and volunteers are part of that. That's great.
So can we suggest a process? So perhaps moving this to committee to present a pro and con of the implementation to be presented at the next academic senate meeting for a first read.
You know,
Does that sound fair?
Is there not a committee of the academic senate that oversees this issue?
Not this particular matter specifically. We can certainly look at one that's charge looks closest to it.
Let's do that.
Okay. Well, before, let me ask two questions. So, if I understand right, you want to create a committee to find out what the plus and minuses are, because if I understand you right now, the plus is we want to help out the B plus students.
And also punish the B minus, yeah.
I don't see how we're punish them, but the second point, if I volunteer to be flexible in my classroom, can I then, as being flexible individual, I'll go ahead and give this student the plus, and I won't give that student the minus. So that student rather being a B minus is a B, and this student is so it'd be from an individual to individual.
But your B would still be lower than a B plus.
Right, but it's higher than a B minus.
Yeah.
So
I think you can do that.
And then
if
you'll
it was
put
on
their
service.
participation points and they'll be fine.
So since you're the chair of the Ed Policies Committee, do you feel like it should be in the Ed Policies Committee to take a look at this?
Yeah.
Does it feel like it's part of its charge?
It's hard to say.
Okay.
If you want to think about it,
Yeah.
and, the executive committee.
Okay.
But you know what, isn't this, oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to hear both from Susie and from our counseling representation about the fact that it's voluntary. And so does that mean when a student is in a course that doesn't offer pluses and minuses, will their B look different from a course where there was? Right? How does that work on their transcript? You know what I'm saying? And also, is it common in these schools that do have pluses and minuses? Is it common for it to be voluntary, or is that something that we're coming up
When you
with?
say schools, you're talking about UC track?
UC.
What, anywhere that has a plus or minus
Anybody has
system.
plus and minus.
It's not voluntary at that level.
I don't
But for
see how it
sure,
could be.
if a student gets a plus, it's going to help with their transfer effort because it's going to improve their.
Yeah, this,
So if I'm offering pluses and minuses and Dan's not offering pluses and minuses, my B and his B would look the same on the transcripts.
No, if I'm giving
Yes.
a B plus, it's 3.2.
A B would, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. My B and his B would look the same.
Yes.
If I gave a B
Yeah.
plus, it would be a 3.3.
3.3.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we are a community college, and the fact that only 10 have done it, I mean, that should put a lot of weight on it right there. There's a reason why only 10 have done it.
The bigger issue would be in the volunteer situation, what Marjorie just pointed out, is that, so we don't know if the system would necessarily, because we can't afford, B minuses at this point, or A minuses, or the computer system would have to actually accommodate that.
Well, just something our computer system can calculate GPAs right now anyway. You guys have to do it manually, right?
Right. Not in
No,
campus.
it calculates, but if it doesn't allow for you to enter the plus or the minus, you have to do it.
No.
That would be an issue.
Can I say something?
Yes, please, Pat, go
I
ahead.
don't think that's going to be an issue, Martha. I think we will all follow the same numbering scheme, so to speak. And if you're just giving Bs and no pluses and minuses, then everybody in your class who gets a B, they will get that same weight as
No.
people who...
Literally, you can't do it at the end report. When you put that bubble on the computer system, when you report your grades online, they don't have a place for you to bubble in.
Well, they will have to when this gets changed.
That's
right.
So, again, I wonder if we should just.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's move this forward if we all.
But
So-
Green Table will tell us that, of course, we can do
That's a
it.
really good idea.
This is what happens whenever we.
I say this needs to be tabled until you got more information.
Well, I think that's why it needs
Much
to go
more.
to committee,
Yes.
right?
I
Like the
agree.
committee
Yeah.
should
It's being
discuss these
referred to.
things
Yeah.
and present it because we're trying to do the work of what the committee could be doing right
Right.
now.
So then
Exactly.
that would be next
That's-
time.
right, that's what I'm
Next meeting, you
saying.
could do that.
Right, so let's do that.
So thanks for the information. Let's move on.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
So, who puts it on the
Okay.
agenda? Does Barbara do that?
Judy?
Judy, I mean.
Okay, we have three executive committee
executive
recommendations.
Oh.
I'm willing to take them individually or together. It's up to the will of the body here. The CTE dean is about to go forward, so I wanted to officially appoint that committee. And I think it's actually started to meet. I think they actually have already had their first meeting. And then the dean of faculty, there's the list there. And then officially appointing Katie Rodriguez, the faculty co-chair of the Professional Development Oversight Committee, which is actually going to be officially created next week, I think.
Move to vote on this.
Can I ask, could you clarify, what is this dean of faculty? I was interested in that.
Dean of faculty, I wish Dr. Bell was here to talk about it more fully. But basically,
Bob Miller's here.
I don't know if you want to talk about dean of faculty, Bob, or the dean of faculty. There's a question about what the dean of faculty is going to do.
Okay, it's like 18 conversations going on back here. Correct. So, the dean of faculty position is a position that will be reporting directly to Dr. Bell. Their primary responsibility will be to deal with all faculty-related issues, such as evaluation issues, working with the grievance issues, dealing with student concerns that come up through the vice president. The idea of the position is to be both an advocate for faculty as well as someone who can address faculty needs and student needs in a more expeditious manner. Anybody who's observed Dr. Jacobs over the years, or even Dr. Bell now, knows that they spend a significant amount of time dealing with issues that relate directly to faculty needs or student needs or both. So the idea is to have this position that will facilitate the process for students and for faculty, as well as give Dr. Bell more time to deal with many of the issues that our chief academic officer needs to deal with.
Pat, does that answer your question? Or?
I see this very quizzical look in Pat's face.
Well, I'm trying to picture this in terms of this imaginary schema that I'm continually changing in my mind as I read all these things that come out.
To the president, it's on the.
Reports directly to the vice,
to Dr. Bell.
For Dr. Bell, yes.
And my understanding of it basically is, it's basically, for example, I've had issues where students have had issues with my classroom, and it's usually, a lot of this has ended up on Dr. Bell's desk or Dr. Jacobs' desk. This would be another person that would handle before it got there. So, for example, like students who don't like their grade, you know, it would just sort of make it easier for those things to be solved more expeditiously. Mine went on for 2 years, literally for 2 years.
Wow.
You know, so this just, it would make, at least that's my sense of the dean of faculty. I might be misunderstanding what Dr. Bell's thinking. But basically, it would be sort of another medium person between the dean and him to handle those kinds of issues. Yes?
I would like for us to address these individually.
Sure.
You asked earlier.
Sure, no problem. I'm going to take a motion one at a time.
But let me ask, so then this dean of faculty, he or she would have the power, we'll say, to resolve or simply pass along to Dr. Bell?
I'm assuming that the student would have the same right to appeal up to Dr. Bell's office like any other.
But you know, it doesn't matter. We're just looking at whether we're going to do these hiring committees. These definitions are long past us now. These are already decided positions. You can't go back and say, oh, we can't get this position.
But we're just trying to understand what it is, Mark.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
You know, we're not trying to change it.
I don't think Yolanda was actually finished with her statement.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off? I'm so sorry.
I wanted to look at them individually
Okay.
because, I mean, I know I am not the only person that's concerned with the same people being on all the committees over and over again. I mean, nobody's ever asked me to be on a hiring committee. I'm perfectly willing to be on a hiring committee. Matt Jordan, the way I understand it, is moving into administration. And he seems to be being put on all these committees that are really faculty. So I guess I have some objections to, you know, and I guess you appointed yourself to the.
I will step aside if you want to step in for me.
I guess I just feel like it seems like everything is being done by the same group of people.
You want the honest truth? The reason why is because a couple of these came together during the summer when people weren't here, and so I'm perfectly willing to step aside and let
So all I'm saying is that maybe since there's more people here now, maybe we should try to spread it around more.
We also have about 30 more positions to hire, so you keep that in mind.
But they're not going to be these types of positions.
The only issue with number one is that they've already actually started meeting, so I don't think we can actually change the composition of the committee that's already been meeting.
Because
The number two that hasn't started meeting yet.
yeah. What if we say no?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
See, this is what I object to. Things go forward before we are even asked. And, you know, that's why I keep asking about the Carnegie hours, because I expect one day we're going to come in here and they'll done deal, sorry.
Wait. Now I am disturbed. Now you just brought, I am disturbed. What was your name? What was your name on that phone there?
Mark.
Mark just said, well, we can't say, blah, 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 because it's already a done deal, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, that's one thing for the board of trustees to have approved a position. But for the hiring committees to have already met, breaks protocol. Because we haven't appointed anybody to the hiring committee.
So then we can vote and say no right now.
Mark,
And
so, quite honestly, yeah, you could step aside, Yolanda, because you're not appointed, and nobody.
Well, that committee hasn't met yet, so I'm perfectly willing to step aside first.
Yeah.
All right, so I move that we vote on the next 3 executive committee items individually.
But you can't, because she's already voted to, individually.
So
Oh, that's right.
so
I thought she moved. You got a second.
I second it.
Now we can
Okay,
vote on it.
so let's take number one, to appoint
Oh, you got to
Matt Jordan, Shelley
you have to
Gaskin,
vote
and
on
Mr.
it
Gogan to
first.
the hiring committee for
Oh,
CPP.
Dustin, you have to vote on it.
No.
No, we have to vote to move the motion.
You have to vote to move the motion
Oh,
before
okay,
you
motion.
can
I'm learning.
come here.
I'm learning.
Oh, the motion to split it, okay.
Motion to look at them individually.
Okay, all in favor of splitting it into three, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we're taking them one at a time. So do I have a motion for number one? Thank you, Ani, and second.
Second.
Okay. And so, any discussion? Yes,
My question is Matt Jordan a faculty member at this point?
he is this currently as of this moment.
And when will he be? How long?
Oh, yeah, how long?
How long?
Is he gonna move up?
That I cannot answer, I don't know.
I mean, is this hiring, I think he's an inappropriate person since he may still not be faculty once.
But isn't this one already here? Number one?
Yes, go ahead.
I can speak to that. Matt is among several candidates for that position. We have not yet scheduled the interviews, but we will shortly. So perhaps it would be wise not to include him in that, in case, and I emphasize this, in case he is a successful candidate. I don't, it's not appropriate to imply anything.
And we already approved him 2 weeks ago for some other committee that he was on.
But isn't that one already done, you said?
No, they're not done.
Well, couldn't we
Something's
seek out,
here.
I believe Deborah is a seat, or you're in band?
No, I'm in EMT.
Okay. So are there CTE faculty that we could reach out to? I mean, I know you put out emails all the time,
Yes.
Dustin, and you're working your. So
Honestly, I've worked hard trying to find people.
I know you have. And one of the problems is, of course, it all had to be done so quickly, so.
And in the summer.
But generally, faculty should hire their own dean if we have faculty.
So basically, if I understand, basically to remove Matt from there, and then do we want to appoint somebody to replace him though? I guess we can't do that right now because it's not on the agenda.
No, all we can do is vote to say yes or
Dan
no.
wants to step in?
No, I just want to point out, I volunteered Krista, because Krista actually works under CTE for the library tech program. So.
And she volunteered for that committee.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I had originally volunteered for that committee, but was unavailable for one of the early meetings.
Would you like to volunteer yourself to step in for Matt if he's no longer able to do it?
Yeah, I would be happy
I'm
to
not
do
sure the
that.
committee would not like to be consulted. I don't
I
know
know,
that they
well,
will want us taking a person off and sticking a person
There
in.
is no
committee.
There cannot be a committee yet until people are actually appointed, Pat. There's no committee.
Well, but if they think they're a committee and they've met.
Well, they can think all they want, but, you know, the duck can think.
Well, the thing is, the executive committee approved these over the summer, and we do have the right to do that in the absence of the Senate, so that they've technically already been appointed. The Senate's just going to ratify what we did. So it should be say ratify instead of appoint.
But the Senate's not ratifying what you did.
They're
That's
saying
the
no.
problem.
Thank you.
Deborah's had her hand up.
Yes, Deborah, go ahead.
I'd like to point out that I believe there was at least one interview, I think possibly 2 interviews for this position today, and there are more scheduled for tomorrow. So.
I thought you said this one wasn't set.
Yeah.
We were told early October the person
Number
would be
2
announced.
isn't set, not
Number 2 is not met yet.
We're talking about number 1. So
Yes.
if this is already done, then
Yeah,
It
then.
is done.
Very long time.
Krista wrote me an email saying they've already met. And so I know, that's why she was worried that it wasn't on the last agenda. So Krista was the one who brought it to my attention that it wasn't here. Yes, please.
I just want to, the questions come up, what happened in the summer? And so what happened in the summer is we were presented with 30 committees that the administration said needs to be filled immediately in order to get the hiring process going. We came back and said there's no way that we can do that without a faculty here to approve whoever we think is appropriate. So we said absolutely not. These were the very few committees that the whole campus seemed to agree needed to go forward. So we said no to 27 committees being filled by us and said, okay, these are the ones that seem most necessary to go forward. So as a group of 4, we came up with the people who are on campus and available. So we didn't mean to circumvent the system. It was a matter of we said no to 27 of them and said, okay, these are the ones that they're saying have to start now, otherwise it won't be functional for classes and for work on campus. So we really only pushed forward with these 3 and not the 27 others. So to alleviate some of the fear that we were going forward without any input, we said no to most of them. In fact, the vast majority of them. But there were some that needed to get started. And my understanding is this is not by any means a precedence to have a couple of committees that have to be formed, so we went out and requested faculty input, found a handful of people, put them in where we could best. We did recruit when we knew areas, we absolutely recruited to those areas, but I mean, there was a limited number of people, and we did the best to fill those very, very few committees that needed to go forward, so.
Thank you, Jessica.
In regards to that, but I think having said no to 27 is
Right.
excellent, it's very good. But to say we need to go forward because they need to be functioning by the time school starts. Well, school's already started, they're not filled, and school is functioning without them.
Yes.
Right? So if we've been able to function without them, there is no reason for them to have said, hey, it has to be done right now.
I wonder if this is
That's a pretty damn good point.
Yes, Deborah.
And we're here, we could have voted right now.
Right.
I've received emails inviting me to be on hiring committees and made myself available. I mean, unfortunately, it didn't work out. I'm sure many, many other people were included on that email. I'm not sure of the exact number, but I got the distinct impression that you were trying to reach out to as many people as possible to fill these committees.
And just to be honest, I'll get to your point, Roger, in a second. And this is the honest truth, and I'm glad that Bob is here. I've seen Bob working over the summer and working hard, doing like 6 or 7 different jobs. And 3 of these jobs, actually all of them, except for the Dean of Faculty, which actually hasn't met yet, and I will step aside gladly. Bob has worked to the bone, I mean, doing those 4 or 5 jobs. We need people to run fiscal. We need people to run HR. So that's why we allowed those individual ones to go forward. It's a human sort of interest issue. I just don't want to see Bob getting a heart attack from working, himself to the bone. So we went with those that were absolutely critical to replace the 2 people, unfortunately, who did what they did. Those are the ones that we thought were the most critical: the budget people, the HR people. All the others, we said, let's wait till everybody comes back. Make sure that we have people who can actually be here. So we sent out the email to everybody, as Deborah referred to. We wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity. People were away, and so it made it somewhat difficult, but we had a lot of people who stepped up. And so, unfortunately, a couple people had to pull out for one reason or another. So just because I'm here, I slipped myself in. It's because I needed to get somebody to go forward. So that's why, for example, I'm on the police sergeant hiring committee that just met last week. But again, we have our interviews in a couple of weeks. So that's the only reason why you see my name appearing a couple of times, because somebody who couldn't do it just at the last minute stepped back. So I just put myself in. I talked to Stan Perez and said, I'll go ahead and I'll do it. And so that's the sort of genesis of this. So again, if anybody else, I can remove my name from the Dean of Faculty list. I will voluntarily step aside and let somebody step in there. But that's the origin of that. So Roger, please go ahead.
With regard to number 1, is it appropriate to amend and say we remove Matt Jordan, given his potential administration?
Yes.
And we add Deborah instead?
I think it's pretty far along in the interview process.
I think they've already met and interviewed people.
But I haven't been on the 2 interviews that were
It's a
conducted
violation
today.
of shared governance again.
Well, only if you're viewing Matt Jordan as not a faculty member, and I think.
No, but he's
a
hasn't been
faculty
appointed.
now.
It's a matter of principle for us, because we keep getting stepped on, and as long as we keep getting stepped on and say we're fine with that, we're gonna keep getting stepped on.
Well, excuse me, but I'm the only one that's being stepped on here because I'm the only person who's been in CTE for the last year, more than a year, without a D. And I'm perfectly comfortable with the situation as it is, because I know they're in the middle of interviews, and I know that at this point that at least the interviews would be completed. The larger issue I have is that they find someone to fill this position quickly and efficiently. I think there's also the option on the committee that if they don't find someone satisfactory for this position, they're perfectly capable of saying that none of the people meet the standards required for that position, and then they can start all over again. But as it currently stands, I would say let's just get on with it.
So I think that my concern here really is that they have already started interviews.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can legally remove somebody out of a committee that's already done interviews. I think that there's certain confidentiality aspects that are going to be violated. Now again, I don't know if Matt changes positions during the process. I don't know if legally he has to be removed.
And I can say that I had no idea that they actually started, and since they have started, the process that I was talking about will not begin until after. I'll make sure it doesn't begin until this is concluded. How is that? Because I'm actually chairing the committee for those 2 positions, associate dean positions. So I will pledge to this group if it makes any difference that we will not start that process until the CTE dean process is completed. And that is a faculty member. Now, it doesn't necessarily address your concern, but at least in that regard, I can offer that.
Okay, there's something wrong with this process also in the sense that here's a CTE dean, here's a CTE faculty, why isn't, and she made herself available, she's not on there. That's the first thing. Second thing is that you know, the CTE dean was vacant all of last year. The sky wasn't falling apparently last year. Now it's falling. You know, so my point exactly. We had all of last year to hire, and suddenly, oh, we can't do without. We manufacture, and I'm using the royal we here, and I shouldn't because I'm just a plebe. So they manufacture, you know, a crisis when they created the crisis to begin with. You know, they're causing our own shared governance bodies to implode because they're not responding to the needs of shared governance, to the democratic needs of this process, but in fact to a kind of manufactured crisis. So this is appalling. Aside from that, aside from the bad leadership, Deborah, to a certain extent, is correct. Was there an alternative person, however, and there always should be an alternative person in the hiring committee, was there an alternative person to this hiring committee? And who was it? Was there an alternate faculty member to this hiring committee?
This particular one?
Yes.
I have to go back and look at the actual notes and see.
Because that person should have been privy to this information and could easily step in for Matt Jordan.
That's only up to a certain point. After that point, that person doesn't continue as a full member of the committee. It's like other things too.
I've never heard of an alternate member.
It's never had her hand up first and then pass. Okay, go ahead.
We've never had that. I've never heard of an alternate.
It's a juror. Yeah, it's like a juror.
We've never had an alternate in any hiring committee I've ever been on. Ever.
I don't think it's
not a good sign.
Yeah.
Deborah, please go ahead.
Well, this is even other divisions too.
I'd actually like official confirmation that interviewing did start.
Okay.
Because I'm just realizing it's my impression that interviewing started today, and I don't want to make an assumption there, just in case that's incorrect.
So,
I'm sorry that doesn't change anything I've said already, except that I just realized, I mean, I saw a couple of guys who I know are applying for the job, roaming around the division.
so what I
I just want to clarify that. And so I guess Bob's going to check.
In case you're going to find out.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
This is just a recommendation really that we put it in a file someplace for all executive committees, because this is not the first summer that we've come back after the summer to find out that during summer hiring committees popped up and there were no people, so the executive group had to run around and find people. So here they are put before you, and now please ratify them. So my suggestion is that for the future, we may never know that we're going to be asked to staff 30 committees. I think that's certainly questionable. It fits in right with what you just said, Martha. But I do think that since the possibility is there, that over the summer there is going to be a need for hiring committees, I'd like to recommend that in the future, before school is out for whatever we're going to call spring, that maybe several weeks before, that whoever is the president would send a memo to all faculty and say, if you're going to be here during the summer and if you'd be willing to serve on the hiring committee, would you please give us your name? That way, we're not going to come back and bump against this situation. And I agree, Yolanda, over the years, we do see a lot of the same people who are serving on all kinds of committees that are put together kind of in haste, should we say. So I think that maybe this would make the process seem a little bit more like it had been thought about ahead of time, and that it was a more open and transparent process.
The problem, So the problem is, I agree, I think that's a great idea to get those names ahead of time. The problem is we still have to have an academic senate meeting to approve the committees one way or the other. So the concern is that this is one of those moments when, even if we had gotten those names in June, right, then you would have had to trust your academic senate exec to say, we appoint these committees.
We could have been doing this 2 weeks ago.
But Pat's point is right. In other words, you've already have a list of people who have gone through. In other words, you can still have that same process, not approved for a particular committee, but approved to be on a hiring committee if needed.
But did you find out whether they met yet or yes?
Tomorrow and Thursday.
So would you like to?
Yes, so I'm sorry, I was incorrect.
So Deborah, would you like to step in?
No, she can't.
Can you?
She can't.
She
doesn't have time to
It's
review
pretty
anything.
short notice, and
No,
I
she
have a
can't.
conference call with like 20 people tomorrow. in the
Not only
middle
that,
of
but
this.
they'd have to start the entire process
There you
over.
go.
You have to go through all
She
the
can't do that.
applications.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which is why
It
I
would be a nightmare
just
for
called
them.
in
She
the
can't
first
do
place.
that.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't make one of the preliminary meetings, and that's why I couldn't be on the committee.
I say pass it under duress, man.
Okay, I think the biggest point right now is that what we need to do is stop this from happening again. So is there anything that we can do to make sure that if the college says we need these committees and we need to form in the summer, they already know that it's not going to happen. We are not going to fall into their perceived crisis, and we will not form any committees until the semester begins. And by doing that, we avoid all this problem about trying to find somebody at the last minute, trying to prove things that already started. So if there's a way of us informing the college that we're not going to fall into that idea of a crisis, and we're not going to form any committees.
Yes, Dan.
Well, hold up. Was that mean that we can or cannot do
They
this?
cannot at this meeting, anyway.
But in the future, we can
We could
have
discuss
that.
it.
We could
Yes.
include that in the bylaw.
We could include it in the bylaw.
Right,
Okay.
we can't do anything at this meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
This has been an ongoing problem, and even at the last meeting, I think we ratified, retrospectively approved people that were already on a committee that had already started in the summer. So at the last meeting, we already did this, now we're doing it again. But I just want to point out, with the new calendar, we're going to end spring, the first week of May, and we're not going to be back into session until the end of August. Now there's a 4-month break
Yep.
instead of 2 10-week breaks, the way we had it before. So that period is much longer, and this problem is going to be much greater because you have a much bigger gap. So one of the arguments for the new calendar was that shared governance was going to be so much smoother. I don't understand how it would be when we won't meet from the first week of May to the end of August, because that's when summer is now.
But isn't it also possible that more people might actually be around?
Why?
If that is the case, I mean, if we do have.
No.
It's not possible that there will be.
No.
But I'd just
No, it
like to go
wouldn't.
ahead and vote on this.
Are you calling the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so she called the question on number 1. So all in favor of approving number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Oh, actually, I'll probably take hands then. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. 11. All opposed, raise your hand.
Be a Ragosa.
Okay, 11 to 9, the motion passes. Okay, I'm going to voluntarily step aside at number 2, so I will ask for a volunteer to replace me. So we can't volunteer now, we have to get your name officially. So talk to me, I'll pull aside. So you're just going to be approving Rod Foster and Elaine Fong to the hiring committee for dean of faculty. I know they haven't met yet because I'm on it. So any motion for that?
Aye.
Okay, Roger, second? Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, all
Wait,
in
no.
favor, please? Yes.
No, we need 3.
We haven't met yet, so I want to approve we'll appoint the third one
We're
next time.
approving 2.
So I'm stepping aside.
Okay, time out. We're going to approve one in 2 weeks. Why don't we just wait to approve all 3 in 2 weeks?
What's the will of the body?
When does this?
We already have a motion on the floor, but
Are the applications ready to be read? Are they
no,
scoring them
nothing has
now?
started yet with that one.
Oh, then we could wait 2 weeks. It won't be a big issue.
There's no reason to delay 2 weeks if you just.
We could appoint the other 2. There's no reason we have to wait for the third person. They could appoint them and then appoint the third person. They can start meeting in 2 weeks. And Elaine and Rod had volunteered for that.
Is there, without, I don't know the
that's
rules,
good.
but is there a
Then they
reason
know.
why we need to wait to see if anybody wants to volunteer? And supposed to find out?
I don't think we can officially appoint anybody here until it's actually been
But can
on
we
the
find
agenda.
out, if anyone wants to volunteer right now?
This will be called from all campus, not just the.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you
Okay,
can't
I'm
just
gonna
cut
actually,
you.
I want to have a
Thank
list,
you.
and even if you wants to volunteer, let me
You've
know.
already
and
got a
we'll
motion, you
discuss
gotta
it.
do something with the motion.
Okay, so all in favor of appointing Rod and Elaine to this committee, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay. Okay, number 3. Any motion or about number 3? So Okay, Roger, second?
Second.
Okay, Lochner? Okay, all in favor of appointing Katie to
Could I ask a
the...
question?
Yes.
This is something that is an FA issue, and this is a potentially huge assignment. And Mark keeps talking about faculty development in a lot of different conversations. And this is the kind of thing the FA is concerned about, that someone like Katie, very strong new faculty member, is going to take on a load of work without any kind of release time or stipend compensation. So that's a concern to us. There are a lot of people who are going to be asked to take on enormous amounts of responsibility outside the classroom that would normally not be part of shared governance responsibilities. And I don't know how to discuss that in this particular issue, but I think I support Katie's, obviously, because I made the motion, but I also support the fact that she shouldn't be, working so hard without some kind of, whatever, negotiated release time. I don't know quite how this is going to work out, but that's a whole area for us.
I will look into the issue of release time, definitely. I can look into that going forward. I agree, that's a big job. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to approve. All in favor, just raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Abstain. Okay. Okay, that's all the executive committee recommendations. Okay, I have a very quick president's report. I did attend the board retreat on September, I think it was 15th, because my birthday was the 18th. 15th. Three things happened during that meeting I just want to bring to your attention. First, if you don't know already, at that meeting a contract was approved to move to Elution. Actually, I saw the contract signed right in front of me. So that is done, and we will be moving to Elution over the next 18 months, I think it was. Second, if you haven't already seen on the website, Terry Hampton has been appointed the new executive director of HR. And having met her, I think you're going to be all very impressed with her. I certainly was very impressed with her when I did meet her. And then third, the majority of the board retreat was spent talking about San Francisco. Mary Dowell did a presentation on San Francisco. And interestingly enough, the most sort of striking thing about that discussion was that there's a pretty strong concern that the biggest reason why schools are going on warning is because of boards not behaving well or behaving properly. So the board basically decided they need to study carefully their own activity going forward. So that sort of came out of that discussion. And then finally, I just received confirmation from the president this morning that 4 policies that we passed last spring are about to go to the board for approval on their next board meeting. That would be 4020, the enrollment priorities policy is going forward. 4520, a personal thing that actually got me started on shared governance, was student conduct policy with Ani and several others. Worked on that for 4 or 5 years. It's finally going to go for approval. And then what was discussed earlier in this meeting, 6100 and 6150, the 2 faculty hiring policies are both going forward for board approval. I think it's October 3rd is the date. And that's my report. Yes?
Is it possible to get a hold of those 4 items to
Sure.
see before?
Just email me and I'll send you a link to those 4 policies.
They should be on the Senate page under policies.
Okay. Okay, Vice President.
The new materials. Oh, you're gonna have to send them the new materials, not
The new ones? Okay.
not the link.
Email me and I'll send it to you. I have it linked in my computer.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice President.
I have nothing to report.
No report?
I don't need to report.
Okay. Yeah, that was easy. Okay.
Dustin, I
Yes.
just have
Sure.
just a point of clarification. The new HR hiring,
Yes.
the new hiring
Yes.
is one that we approved?
You just ratified it at the last meeting.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay, last but not least in terms of my reporting, thank you for, I got a lot of really positive feedback to the comment that sorry, go ahead.
Just a clarification.
Sure.
Contract approval for what?
Elution, which is going to be the new provider for our new, is it AIS? Hot provider going forward. Okay. I got a lot of positive feedback to the email e-bite I sent out to everybody. If you haven't already received it, let me know. I sent it out to all the faculty. I purposely, this may be I purposely gave first dibs to full-time faculty. Today I'm going to open it up to everybody. I just wanted to make sure that full-time faculty got a chance for the most popular ones first. You can agree or disagree with that. But nothing is full, so everybody will now have an opportunity. So I'm opening up to the entire campus tonight. I sent out as an email attachment to everybody this list for what people are doing to the division hour. It was due by today, but we're going to certainly still accept it during the course of this coming week. We want to really stress that we want faculty to decide what they're doing during professional development day, division hour. So we do want the division to write down what they're doing. There's going to be no approval. So basically whatever the division is doing is fine. So for example, one of the committees in my division is going to be using that hour to meet for what we're doing. So again, whatever your division would like to do, go ahead and write it down here. And if you could just give it to either me directly or into the Senate office, and we'll just collect these all. I got a couple already, one by email and one by person today. So please just fill out this form and give it to us before the end of the week. Yes?
Somebody asked me, do we need to list everybody's names?
No.
No. Okay.
Just the activities.
Okay, so we have several different groups doing different activities, just bands.
Just
and
list them all
activities.
down.
All right.
You don't have to write who's doing what, how many people, just the list of what the activities are. But this is the state requires us to sort of account for what we did during the day. So this is just to write down what activities took place, but not who did them.
So
By the way, there'll be no role taken during
the
division hour. Give it back to me.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, because I'm since the chair of Flex Day. Or Professional Development Day, excuse me. Sorry, that was the wrong one. Yes, please.
A question about this role-taking stuff. There are several faculty who come up to me and said, I'm not normally scheduled to be on campus on Tuesdays, like ever. Why should I have to be there on Flex Day? Are they contractually obligated to be there, even though they're not scheduled to teach on that day?
Yes.
My understanding is yes.
And if they're not, then they will.
Full-time
incur
only.
pay.
Full-time only.
Full-time
Adjuncts, no.
Adams, no.
No, adjuncts, no. Adjuncts are only required to be here for the hours that they're here on Tuesday and Thursday. I'm sorry, on Tuesday, excuse me, Tuesday. So if an adjunct works Monday and Wednesday, they're not required to be here on Professional Development Day.
So
Yes.
people who don't normally work on Tuesdays essentially then are doing extra duty that week. Is that how I should phrase this to these people?
In terms of full-time?
It's part of our contract. You're supposed to be here no matter. If many schools do this ahead of time, we are just the anomaly that does it in the middle of the semester.
So I should just tell the Tuesday only people, I'm sorry you're being unfairly burdened that week beyond your normal, beyond whatever it's part of their contract.
It's part of their contract. It's not above and beyond.
That's a separate concern from what I'm addressing.
Yeah.
Well, don't
Where is
It might be a good,
What?
should I encourage them to bring it up as well?
That's an FAA issue.
Okay.
They don't like it.
Yes, please, Joe.
At the workshop, are we doing attendance? People signing in?
Afternoons, are you talking about the workshops?
Yes.
Yeah, the workshops basically are going to be a list that I'm going to be producing out of Eventbrite. In fact, I have the list on my computer. I'm going to print them all out by division, as we talked about last time, and then everybody will sort of just sign it. And the deans requested that we basically give a copy to them, and also the majority of the copies will just go to Dr. Bell at the end of the day. Yes?
This is just clarification, but when you just said that you were opening up something tonight.
The original, because basically there's a cap for how many people can attend each
Right.
workshop.
Yeah.
And so I thought it would be only fair to basically give the first wave for the first weekend to the full-time faculty, and then I'm going to open up to everybody starting tonight. So all the adjuncts now will be signing up for workshops.
Oh, okay, but that's by everybody, you meant faculty.
All
because-
faculty, adjuncts and full-time.
Okay, because classified, you brought it up.
No, classified are not, are going to be working.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
That's it.
All right. So I move that we end this meeting.
Well, I do have a couple.
Wait.
Okay, FA report?
FA report? No, I've spoken already.
Okay.
No,
Well,
I'm
we
just
have
turning it
a,
over to Danny or Roger.
Well, we continue to negotiate each Friday, and they've been quite contentious. And the FA position is still, at this point, we are contesting the cancellation of winter session legally, collegially. We see it as a violation of contract, violation of shared governance. And I realize a lot of people are very uncertain, but we did not create that uncertainty. Dr. Rocha did. And so we're fighting this as best we can. We also think it's very important to talk to your students. The students seem overwhelmingly in favor of keeping winter. I mean, every time I bring it up, just casually, I try not to give them leading questions. So we'll continue to negotiate quite seriously. This week, Dr. Rocha is not available, but we will negotiate with the two attorneys. We're hopeful. Quite a bit has been listed. It is confirmed by the college that 6.7 million will be passed. Would be part of Prop 30 if passed. That's about 1,220 sections. And the cancellation of winter is absolutely unacceptable if that passes. And we're willing to talk about that. But also, you should know, the PCC is the only district of the 72 districts and 112 campuses that's canceling winter entirely, eliminating the concept. Many other places are eliminating classes and more or less waiting on Prop 30. but the idea of doing such a drastic change so quickly in violation of shared governance and contract is only PCC. We are being watched around the state, and talking to people around the state. There's an awful lot of concern about what's going on in this thing.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, does staff have a report? I don't see Joe. Okay. Adjunct? You have any?
Not this time.
Okay. Okay, last professional development day is October 2nd, and I have some news that maybe you can take back to your divisions. We have got approval from Ty to have trucks on campus during professional development day at lunch. So we're going to probably have a Kogi truck. And looking to a couple others, so if anybody has any suggestions, I'm in charge of getting that all organized, so please let me know. I've never done this before, so I hope I can get it done well. And thank you for all the positive feedback on the e-bike. That goes to Leslie Chirapelli for doing a good job putting that together. I apologize it took a couple extra days, but you can see that it looks really nice. And the fall plenary again is November 8th to 10.
What is November 8th?
That is the statewide plenary.
We're going to just invite them. If there's a
All
need
four of the
they'd like,
execs.
let me know.
Yeah, because I know there's such a.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Other trucks are going to hear.
Second, thank you.
Yeah, we need to
Mark
get
and
approvals for wherever they are, if they're gonna be like on campus, so there's like a, Pasadena has a city, like a policy about how to do it. So, we just have to follow through. So those are the three that we're working on right now.
That's great.
I'm excited.
That Commodore one is good, but it's expensive.
I know, it's true, but they're so delicious.
I know, I think your stuff is really good. I had them once when we had art night.
Yeah.
They always have the best spot, and it's right over there, by that little small.
You know, there's a dosa truck, and then Friday I'm free in the afternoon.
A bunch of other committees are coming. I mean, I can have this. I have a list of people. And honestly, I was just.
Could you please make sure you get some that are healthy? I mean, that cheese between.
I got